Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Tales of Stattendor, with me, James David. Now, in this episode, I wanted to talk more about the origins of Tales of Stattendor. While I did initially think of the idea for the comic book series around about 2020 during the height of the COVID pandemic, many ideas for characters and stories stretch back even further, all the way to when I was still in primary school. So, without any further hesitation, let's get into it. So, the year is roughly 2007. I'm still in school, and in an English class, I'm given the task of writing a short story inspired by a fairy tale. Now, at the time, I wasn't really sure what to do or how to do it or what I should be doing, if I should be doing it, but I just thought, you know what, it's school. I'm not going to take it too seriously. What's the worst that could happen? Well, during the class, I had an idea for a story. It was basically a farm boy and a talking goat run away together and go on an adventure. I remember the story was called Jack and Ollie, and it wasn't very, detailed. Jack was the young farm boy dreaming of a better life with more excitement, and Ollie was a talking goat who just wanted to get away from the farm. That was essentially the idea, and by the end of the story they do manage to run away, and I left the ending open because I wanted the reader to feel like maybe they're still out there having their adventures. I mean, obviously this was in a fantasy world at the time, which I hadn't really defined, and it was for a one-off school project, but that project itself, it lit a creative fire in me, which still burns today. It was after that I came up with the idea for a small short story called Heroes of the Realm. Jack and Ollie are adventuring outside of a kingdom, I think, and I don't have the original copy of the story, but I remember the outline of it. They sneak into a market town where they encounter a talking dog and a young witch, and they fall afoul of the law or something of that sort. After that, they uncover a plot and they decide, well, we've got to do something about it. Looking back at it, I think that was probably the initial step in creating a fantasy world, even though at the time I just imagined it being in medieval England, so it obviously wasn't too outlandish, but as I wanted to write more, I realised that I didn't want to be too constrained with what I was doing and the world it was in, so I decided to create one of my own. And from that, many years later, after I left school, I went to boarding school from 16 to about 18 or 19. I can't remember the exact dates off the top of my head, but during that period I intermittently wrote short stories and they continued to evolve. I examined other fantasy worlds as well as maps of fantasy worlds and the real world to sort of give me inspiration for world building. At the time, this fictional world didn't really have a name, so I just called it the world, and I imagined it more sort of like proto-medieval Europe in the sense that it's very temperate, lots of grasslands with fields and hills and lots of dense forests. But the more I started to play Dungeons and Dragons, I started to imagine different kinds of worlds and different kinds of climates. I imagined more arid places, and I imagined deserts or lush rainforests, not all in the same place of course, but sort of spread out over this fictional world. I tried to create a sort of varied world where there was deserts and tundras and flowing meadows and sort of jagged cliff faces, and I pictured it all in my mind as like a real place, but I'd never really given it a name, and I only really used it for the occasional game of Dungeons and Dragons I played with my friends at school. I left school, and for a few years I didn't really play Dungeons and Dragons, but I still had some of the journals and the story ideas. But I wanted to do more writing and I wanted to be more creative, but I realised that I needed to really create my own fantasy world. I was doing a few different odd jobs. I was working in a hospital at one point. I worked in a few different cafes and restaurants. But the idea for this series, it continued to linger in my mind. So I thought, okay, if I'm going to create this series, I need to have like a properly defined world, how it looks, and what it should be like. I did that, slow and steady, but I finally had to decide upon a name for the world, and this was hard. I couldn't really decide on it right away. Creatively, I had to pick a name which was pronounceable but also magical. I tested my dad on this because I gave him random names like written on paper, and I asked him, how would you pronounce this and how would you pronounce that, because he doesn't really get the whole fantasy thing, and that's okay because, you know, not everybody likes fantasy. But I realized that if he could pronounce them easily, then other people could, and I thought, okay, sounds really weird to do, but he actually pronounced a lot of the names fairly easily, so I was like, okay, well, that's quite handy. And it's also reassuring because I would think of these long mystical names, and then he would be like Falamandaya or Falamanchinola or something like that, and I thought, okay, well, it can't be too long then. And the name for the world, my original D&D homebrew setting / story world, finally became Stattendor. Once I had decided upon the name, I realized that I had a choice. Is the main continent called Stattendor, or is the world called Stattendor? And once I started thinking of story ideas, I just thought, well, I'll put that on the back burner just for a while. I mean, I was still trying to create the world and then think of ideas for stories, and trying to juggle them at the same time was a little difficult, but not impossible. And once I had created enough characters, I just thought, you know what, I'll just call the world Stattendor. It'll be easier that way, and I won't have to worry about it so much. Once I started creating characters and drawing up maps, I found myself facing another dilemma, which was, how much of the world do I sort of reveal? Do I put the whole world map up there for people to see, for the reader to see once they open the book? Or do I do it on a sort of a regional basis? And with each new installment in the series, the world itself would be expanded upon. At first, I leaned more towards just having the whole world map so they could see the whole world in its entirety. But one thing which I remember reading in Lord of the Rings wasn't so much the world, but the sense of mystery and stories that come with the towns and places they encountered, and discovering Moria for the first time. Oh, that was so cool. I mean, even learning its original name of Khazad-dûm was such an iconic thing at the time. I do apologise if I'm mispronouncing a few of these names and locations, so I do once again offer my sincerest apology to the fans. But no, I just remember, like, okay, at the time, building the world, I decided to, I do have it all mapped out, but I'm not going to reveal all of it right away. I feel now that when it comes to being creative and wanting to explore the world, that sense of mystery should be held for the reader. So as they read more and learn more about the characters and their travels, so as one character in the book will reference, oh, I've been to so-and-so place, and then later on in the story, the other group of characters go to that place and say, oh my god, it's exactly how he described it. And I want to maintain that sort of mystery and sense of wonder for readers. As the terrain of the world slowly came together, I started to weave history into it. So, imagining the rise and fall of ancient civilizations, the appearance of heroes and adventurers, the sort of magical origins of certain races and beings, the idea that gods might physically exist. It was through this process of careful and delicate world building that I slowly came to another roadblock process of creating Stattendor, I realised that I was putting so much into the world and imagining so many characters, I wasn't quite sure in which character should be the first one to really start the series. So this was an issue which continued to linger and plagued me creatively. I would write so many short stories focusing on different characters and different events, and I then realised, oh, I haven't really thought of the entire history of the world. So in that case, I now need to write one up or plan one. This also hindered my creative process a bit more. So I'm laughing as I think about this, because at the time I was just imagining the world, and as I was starting to fill it with different races and peoples, I then thought, how old is this world? What's happened? How did it begin? But I then thought, okay, maybe I don't focus on the beginning of the world and I leave that to the world in the sense that it's been forgotten in the pages of history. Maybe there will come a point when I may want to explore the origin or the creation of the world, but that's pretty far down the road. Like, it's so far down the road I can't even see it. Right now there'll be creation myths, but that'll be it. It won't be like anything any of the characters in the world think it will be. I mean, the only real characters I think who would focus or want to focus on the origin of the world and how it came to be would probably be the religious sort, but once again, this is an issue which I think is best left unexplored and unexplained for now. Ironically, the very topic of this episode being the origins of Stattendor I wanted to talk about, and now the origins of the mythical world of Stattendor I don't want to talk about have come up, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, I should have seen that coming. I haven't really planned this out. This is more the way I do these are for a stream of consciousness, so I just talk off the top of my head and try and explain it as the best I can, because I find that when I write scripts, it doesn't always go according to plan. Anyway, I digress. So when it came to creating characters, I created a history, but I didn't go back too far, just because I felt like I'd be bogged down in all the finer details. Then again, I also feel like some mysteries should be lost to history, otherwise not everything is really explained, kind of like in our world, where there are still some big mysteries about certain historical people and events, but we may not ever truly get an answer as to what happened. So until then, we are left to imagine what could have happened and what might have happened. I really had to consciously stop myself from explaining away every little mystery, because as I am autistic myself, I hate unsolved or unfinished stories or mysteries, and I like to try to get to the bottom of everything, so I learn how it works and what I know about it, what did happen, what didn't happen, and I think as a writer I can't explain everything. I have to leave it up to the reader to interpret some of it, because if I explain everything away, the world suddenly becomes a lot more, I wouldn't say logical, but simplistic, and there isn't that much eagerness for exploration. I mean, I may or may not be oversimplifying this. In fact, drop your opinions on that in the comments below, because I want to see what people think. Anyway, regardless of mysteries and such, I came to the conclusion that I needed to create not so much a starting region, but a starting continent in which most of the stories would unfold and events would take place, and this would be where a majority of the stories would happen. So I wrote an article about this on my Patreon page, which if anyone isn't subscribed to, I recommend you go check out. I created this place called the Successor Kingdoms, and I named it that because these regions were originally part of this greater empire made by humans a very long time ago, but then it collapsed, and what remained of the provinces of this empire went on to become kingdoms in their own right. So the Successor Kingdoms became the starting area for Tales of Stattendor. When I started to fill the Successor Kingdoms with a bit of history and adventurers and the stuff they got up to, I thought, okay, that's fine, but I can't go too much into it. I would rather people sort of uncover the history of this region through the comic books and through the stories, and I was kind of excited by it. I like to even say it, to talk about it. When I was stuck in my bedroom thinking, okay, I want to tell stories, but I want to do it in a way which people might not expect, so I thought, okay, I'm going to do a comic book series. I reached out to an artist, I talked about what I wanted to do. The artist I started speaking to was a guy called Alvarez, and he's fucking cool. He does like these great sort of pictures and renditions of what the world looks like, and even though it's still in the very early stages, I'm just glad that I'm able to do more of Tales of Stattendor with him. So if you haven't got a copy of Tales of Stattendor, I'd seriously recommend you get the first 3 comics from my Etsy shop. If you want to see what's happening in the world of Stattendor without buying a comic, then you can go check us out on Webtoon. I'd recommend you all subscribe to my Patreon to get all the behind the scenes details as to how the series is going. And I also recommend you subscribe to my YouTube channel for more updates and more episodes of this podcast. Originally I was thinking about posting it only on Spotify, but then I thought YouTube is probably better for me. And yes, I will do more videos of myself in the episodes later on, but I like a bit of mystery at the moment. Just like I like in my comics. But no, I'm really excited to see what the future holds for Tales of Stattendor, and I hope that all of you too enjoy the vibrant mysteries and colourful adventures of the people in the world of Stattendor.